So this is our continuing series on unsound chess, and we're going to cover a subject today called 2D versus 3D chess, because it's been around for a long time, but with the advent of computers, 2D has taken on a whole new context. It's 2D that moves, so it probably can't really be even considered 2D chess in the traditional sense. We've had people show up at tournaments, and the tournaments, real over the board rated tournaments, who have never played a tournament game and have never played a board game on an actual 3D chessboard with a chess clock. And while they're decent players, they come out in shock because of how different it seems to them that the world has become. Like, they're begging for their app again. They're saying, well, if I could play them on my app, I'd beat them. The app being some sort of Android phone or something that they have where they're playing like really fast moves, and the clock is handled for them after they move. They don't have to punch a clock. They don't have to move a piece. They don't have to, set up the pieces. Whatever they need to do. They're practically in shock. Not only that, but what I've noticed is that the people who do this and play on their phones all the time and have never played over the board chess in tournaments tend to give up the game because they equate it with other games that are like various types of graphical games that go on computers that are joystick based type games, with their that have to do with hand-eye coordination, and they also become slaves to, from what I can tell, chess engines. They always know, well, I have to see where I went wrong. They run it through the engine right away. So they are trying to emulate engine play as opposed to really embrace good practices in chess, general principles so that they thought up themselves and employed themselves. They're basically always checking with the machine to see why they couldn't play like the machine. It becomes kind of a joystick mania in some players' cases, and you can even see it in bullet chess tournaments online where, bullet chess, the type of bullet chess that gets played on some of these sites would be completely impossible in person. You can't move pieces that fast. There are sites where there's absolutely no delay at all, where a person can sit there, and this has happened to me, where they're sitting there with 14 seconds on their clock and it never goes down, and they finish the game in 30 moves, and they simply can move so fast that they take no time, which of course is a Star Trek type plot. It shouldn't happen in the real world. Lag time, they're kings of like living off other people's lag time, and their ratings are high because they finish all their moves in 2 or 3 minutes in a 5-minute game, let's say. So these people are doing something else. They're practicing hand-eye coordination and not blundering, as opposed to trying to do something creative at chess. So what's interesting is how computer chess differs than over-the-board play, and to a large extent, computer chess is entirely 2D. Now you can have a 3D representation where you can get it set up, and with computers there are even sites that allow you to request takebacks, and when people do this, it's like real chess isn't played with takebacks. I mean, you when you're first beginning chess, you say, can I take that back? And a serious chess player doesn't even want to consider that possibility with somebody. You've already been in concentration about what they've already done, and some takebacks are not a good part of chess. So, the hand-eye coordination situation, there was a guy in New York that I remember who almost never lost a game, even to very highly rated players, simply because he could play 1-minute chess. He could play so fast that nobody could keep up with him, and he just didn't blunder, and it was just, motivated by money to play. But, in a longer game, these people generally fall apart against good players. Now, the question becomes 2D versus 3D over-the-board performance. Now, in the old days, when people played 3D chess, they learned out of newspapers and books and periodicals, things like that, and they would see representations of the chessboard in 2D, simply a printout of a chessboard with some pieces on it. And if it really bothered them, they'd go set it up on a 3D chessboard. Other than that, what you try to do is you try to work it out in your head. You try to work problems out, and sometimes even long lines were given. These days they're called like PGNs, and The fen is an electronic setup of a position, and the PGN is then the progression of a game through various positions like that. And the book 2D was an improvement upon what we presently have in the computer world. And the reason why is because it forced people to study the game in their heads, to move the pieces in their head. Even when you go to set up a board to analyze a position that's in a book, the practice of then moving the pieces is crippling your mind. So what you want to be able to do is do all this in your head as much as you can until you just can't do it, and then maybe move it to a point where you can then visualize it in person rather than in your mind. So computers take that away altogether. Computers give you the ability to model, to look at it, to make the moves, and it's very easy. Now, if you treated a computer screen like you do a book, you'd lose the benefit of it really being a computer, the fact that it's dynamic and moves, and you can do engine analysis and all the other things. So book 2D improves your over-the-board 3D performance. Computer 2D, if that's really 2D, because it does include time as well, that's questionable. I think it probably does, but it depends on how you use it and what you employ it for. Your imagination is the most important thing that you have. Not moving the pieces and setting them up only when it's too difficult is what really counts. So if you go to really amazing tournaments, where they put a giant demonstration board up for the very top boards, where the grandmasters, are on board one. Like, for instance, there are tournaments or world championship matches where Boris Spassky, for instance, would be up there on a little platform playing board one against whoever he was playing. And during the game, one would see Spassky, and this is true, staring up at the demonstration board almost as much as he looked at his own board. The question is, why would he do that? Why would he sit there and crane his neck around and stare up at the big board? Well, it's because he's improving his ability to visualize chess. He doesn't need to look at the 3D representation in front of him and his opponent when he can look up at that and get a whole new perspective on it. And it's because now he's going to move pieces around in his head. And I've had epiphanies where I went to the bathroom during a game. I went into the bathroom, and on the way there or on the way back, I was thinking, why can't I just move this? Or driving cars, in particular, when we're doing, long chess games online, the type where it takes days to, make a move. And, or I'm consulting with the student about a position. We talk about the position. It comes to me, why can't we do this? Because I'm thinking about the position, and that's with no board whatsoever. I'm simply thinking, gee, I wonder if it's possible to move, bishop to b2 in this situation. And they turn out to be strong moves most of the time, but something for some reason a person doesn't really see over the board. And of course, the world of blindfold chess is full of that sort of thing. And Spassky would do it while playing, staring up at a demonstration board. So this gets to our last point, that chess is actually more of a 4D type of game or sport. And the fourth dimension is thought to be time. Now, specifically, chess is a matter of time in the mind. Time in the mind is something we can cover in another video, but sometimes people disappear into their minds and they come out and half an hour's gone off the clock and they don't know what happened, and they look and they say, "Whoa, did this really elapse?" And this happens online a lot. Chess is something between human beings that happens where things move in time as well as physically on the board, and they happen in your mind first and foremost. There's really no necessity for boards. So the best practice in my mind about how to improve is that what you do is you use no board whenever possible. Next, you do the book. You read books and you try to imagine positions and you move the pieces around in your head whenever possible. And if you use a computer, try to do the same thing. And whatever you're weakest at, do that most. And you will begin to gradually take the edge off whichever one you're not doing well at. There are players who think that it's a lot harder to look at a 3D board than it is a 2D representation. I can tell you, everybody who grew up playing chess in 3D pretty much thought the opposite. They thought it was much harder to look at a book. A 2D, of course, the book is hard because the pieces don't move. So Some of my best ideas have come from never looking at a chessboard. And as a rule, you want to practice at what you're weakest at using some sort of blindfold type principle. And we can look at that as a separate type subject when the time comes. So this is my take on how to study at chess. What you want to do is do what's most difficult for you. And when you start moving things around, even on a board, that's the no-no you want to avoid. And hope you enjoy this. Thank you.